Madi-DuV-ASMR, and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. So, in today's video, I'm going to be reading some more scary stories from Reddit for you guys, but this time Halloween edition, since Halloween is just a few days away. This video has been super highly requested, probably the most requested video, in the last couple of months. You guys seem to love my scary story videos and they do really well, so I'm going to deliver. So I ended up picking five different stories off of Reddit, and the original links will be down in the description in case that, like if you fall asleep and you want to go finish reading the stories yourself, or if you really like one of the stories and you want to read more of the author's work, then those will be down in the description for you. I also want to make a quick note: if you are the author or creator of any of these stories and you want this video to be taken down, please reach out to me via Instagram and email, which will also both be in the description, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so just a few quick notes before we start the video. I do have some nice candles and kind of fall decor in the back. I'm really happy with how my background looks for fall. I just recently changed it. Also, if you saw this video yesterday, it is not the same video. I assure you, I'm actually refilming this since the audio ended up getting corrupted in yesterday's video. So it'll be all the same stories, but this time you'll actually be able to hear me speak, and the video will actually be ASMR. Alrighty, I will be reading the stories off my phone. I have them all in a Google Doc, and I think you guys will really enjoy them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so the first one is called When It Snows on Halloween, written by the user A Clock Strikes 3, and this was on the subreddit Scary Stories. Halloween is a big deal in my town. Every house goes all out in a competition to see who can freak out the most kids. Luckily for us, they also compete to see who gives out the best candy. It's pretty great. And this year, my friends and I were finally old enough to go trick-or-treating alone. I spent all day getting ready with my friends Ashley and Sherry. I was going as a vampire, Ashley was going as a witch, and Sherry was a werewolf. I was just putting some fake blood around my mouth as a finishing touch when Ashley gasped. "What's wrong?" I asked, without taking my eyes away from the mirror. "It's snowing." "Shoot, remember when I said Halloween was a big deal in my town?" "Yeah, well, snow on Halloween was an even bigger deal in my town. It only happened once in my lifetime, and that was 10 years ago when I was 2, so I don't remember it at all." But that didn't matter. Every year, in the days leading up to Halloween, the grown-ups in town would drill it into our heads that snow on Halloween was a very bad sign, and that if it snowed, we had to follow the rules. The rules were, if it snows on Halloween, every trick-or-treater wearing a mask will be asked to take it off before they can get any candy. If someone refuses to take off their mask, do not offer them candy and do not speak to them. We didn't know why the rules were there, but I honestly didn't care. Sherry was the only one of us wearing a mask after all. "Sucks to be you, Sherry," I joked. "Hope that giant fur ball of a mask is easy to take on and off." "Yeah, Cher, Michaela and I will leave you behind if you aren't fast enough," Ashley said with a laugh. "Very funny, guys," Sherry replied. The good news was that we were staying at Ashley's house for the night. I lost my place. The good news was that we were staying at Ashley's house for the night, and her mom wasn't much of a nagger, so I figured to give us a quick reminder of the rules as we went out the door, and that would be it. My mom, on the other hand, was definitely a nagger. I could sense her phone call before my cell phone even rang. "Yes, Mom," I said as soon as I answered, not letting her get a single word in. Sherry's the only one wearing a mask, and she knows to take it off before getting said as I rang the doorbell. Trick or treat. As the night went on, Sherry got pretty quick at ripping her mask off her head the second she was asked. I had to give it to her because she put it back on every single time. I know the mask completed the werewolf costume, but I probably would have just left it off after the 4th or 5th house. Just before 9 o'clock, we hit the last house in the neighborhood. They were known to give out 2 full-size candy bars at the end of the night just to get rid of them. We ran past a group of kids who were leaving and bounded up the steps. Trick or treat. What great costumes. Go ahead and take 2 bars if you'd like, the woman at the door said. But you two will have to take off your masks. 2. I looked over at Sherry and saw a kid standing next to her. He was dressed as a scarecrow with a burlap sack over his head. The mouth holes were crookedly stitched on, and the aisles were jaggedly cut. I shivered and looked away. Just some kid trying to get their last bit of candy like we were before the neighborhood shut off the porch lights and turned in for the night. I reached into the plastic pumpkin the woman was holding out and grabbed a Twix and a Milky Way. I looked over at Sherry, who was pulling off her mask. The scarecrow stood still next to her, his mask still on. Ashley grabbed her 2 bars and nudged Sherry. Come on, Wolfie, let's go. Sherry grabbed her candy and turned to the scarecrow. Hey kid, you gotta take your mask off if you want any candy. Sherry, you can't talk to him, I blurted out. What? She looked confused for a second before her mistake dawned on her. Oh shoot, the rules. Sherry had moved to town 3 years ago, so the rules were ingrained in her as they were in Ashley and I. We looked at the woman at the door nervously, hoping she would tell us the rules were just some silly made-up thing to make Halloween seem more scary. Instead, a look of pure terror crossed her face, and she yanked the plastic pumpkin back to her chest. Run, she whispered, before slamming the door shut and clicking the lock. Ashley and I grabbed Sherry and pulled her down the steps. We couldn't help but scream, though we didn't know exactly why the woman was so afraid. As we rounded the corner of the sidewalk, I turned to look behind us. I let out a shriek when my eyes met the jagged, empty eye holes of the scarecrow's mask. He was right behind us. Faster, I yelled, pulling on my friend's hands as I sprinted down the sidewalk towards Ashley's house. If we could just make it inside, we'd be safe from whatever the thing chasing us was. Over the ragged gasp of her breath as we ran, I heard the sound of straw rubbing together as the scarecrow gained on us. Finally, I saw the illuminated front porch of Ashley's house. The 3 of us sprinted up the front steps faster than we ever dreamed of running in gym class. Ashley reached for the doorknob and froze. It was locked. She fumbled for the key as Sherry and I pounded on the door for her mom to open up. I could hear the rustling sound of the scarecrow getting louder and louder. Just when I thought my heart would beat straight out of my chest, Ashley swung the door open and pulled us inside. She slammed the door shut and locked it before turning the porch light off. As we collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, my eyes turned to the side table by the door. On it was a piece of notebook paper. I picked it up and quickly read it before crumpling it up. Your mom got an emergency meeting, or had an emergency shift at the hospital, Ashley. We're alone. Before Ashley could respond, there was a loud bang on the front door. The scarecrow was here. And it was mad. We have to barricade the door, I said, standing up and grabbing the side table. Ashley got up and grabbed the other side of the table so that we could move it against the door while Sherry dragged over a chair from the living room. Bang! Something at the window above us as the front doorknob rattled at the same time. Is there more than one of them? Sherry asked. No idea, but we need to get away from the door now, I said, as I scrambled up for the staircase. I figured being off the ground floor was the safest option. We ran into Ashley's room and started pushing her desk up against the door. I was pretty sure the scarecrow outside was no ordinary kid, and I didn't want to find out what would happen if it got to us. Guys, I'm so sorry, Sherry said through choke sobs. I didn't even think, I just thought it was some dumb kid, and it's okay, Sherry said. We're gonna be okay. Bang. All 3 of us shrieked in unison as Ashley's bedroom window shook from the force of being hit. I turned to look and saw those jagged, empty eye holes pressed up against the window. How did it get up here? Ashley screamed. I don't know, but we need to hide. Follow me. I ran to the closet and ushered them This is one of my favorites out of the five. This is probably my second favorite, actually. And it's called Mr. Unlucky. It's written by the user sonicpyscho, and this is also from the subreddit Scary Stories. This one is pretty long, I would say. I was 6 years old when I first laid my eyes on him. It was Halloween night, 1974. I was out trick-or-treating with my big brother and his friends. One of my two friends at the time had either gotten sick from eating all the trick-or-treater candy early, and the other was dragged off to some dumb Halloween party with their parents. But my brother's friends were nice, though. They weren't the kind to leave a child unattended in the middle of a rural neighborhood. As we were finishing up our few final houses, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I turned and saw him, or whatever it was. He was standing on the street about a half football field's length away. His skin was as white as the moon, and his suit was as dark as the center of an eclipse, and there was a dark red light that orbited around him. But one thing that stood out to me most was his height. He easily towered over most men and could effortlessly peer into second-story windows. Something about his presence seemed unnatural. I could tell he was looking at me out of everyone in our group, unmoving in his attempt. I turned to my brother to make sure that he saw it too, but when I turned back to show him, it was gone, as if it were never there at all. My brother assured me that it was most likely someone having their own weird Halloween fun. As I was following them back home, the street lamp above us blew out, causing the glass to shatter. A small shard lodged itself deep into my brother's left arm, blood pouring out from the wound. Our neighbor had heard the light blow out and came out to see what had happened, and was able to call our parents in the hospital. Once we got there, the doctor told us that the shard was too deep for him to remove, and that my brother was going to require surgery. My parents and I waited for what seemed like hours, and then the surgeon had come out and spoke to my parents. He said that my brother was incredibly lucky. If the shard had lodged itself just a centimeter away, it would have severed a nerve, and he would have lost control of his left hand. My brother didn't seem upset about it. He said he'd get a really cool scar after the stitches had removed, so I didn't really have a choice but to be as optimistic as he was. However, something just kept nagging me about the thing I saw, as if my instincts were trying to warn me. I had told my dad about what I had seen a few days later, but he just told me the same thing that my brother did. I couldn't press him for answers or anything. It's not like he knew anything more than I did. I decided to just let it go and never think about it again. That is, until 2 years later, on Halloween night of 1976. I was once again with my brother, but instead of trick-or-treating, we went to a campfire at our church. We lived in Kentucky at the very top of the Bible Belt, and church activities like this were practically mandatory. My brother was recounting a tale of when he heroically saved me from the falling glass shard with his card to prove it. And as I looked beyond the fire, my heart sank to my feet, and a familiar, unnatural feeling of dread overcame me. It was there again, same white skin, same black outfit, same red orbiting light, but this time, he was closer. Much closer. I then began to realize a few things that I didn't before. His skin wasn't white at all. He didn't have any. It was bone. I was staring at a skeleton. The knots of his eyes were as dark as his suit, and it looked like he was wearing a tuxedo with vertical white stripes. But what got to me the most was his smile. It was somehow smiling at me, its jaw contorting into a disgusting grin, and teeth morphing into sharp fangs. The world around me faded away, and I was left with this monstrosity, but he did nothing and said nothing. After 15 horrible minutes, his head tilted down, his lack of eyes gazing into the fire. I slowly and nervously lowered mine in response, only to find that the fire had started to spread to the grass around us. I jerked my head back up, but he was gone just like the first time. But by some divine intervention, a fire truck was patrolling the streets and noticed the out-of-control fire and swiftly extinguished the blaze. so I dubbed him Mr. Unlucky. As the years went by, Mr. Unlucky kept showing up, but a few things were consistent with him. 1, he never showed up 2 years in a row. 2, the closer he was to me, the worse the accident was, and the rarer it was for someone to come along and save me. The opposite situation was also true. 3, he only showed up on Halloween. 4, he never spoke a single word. Over the years, I landed myself at the hospital many times because of Mr. Unlucky. I've been electrocuted, hit by a car, stabbed in the leg, etc. The list goes on. During my trips, I met a sweet, beautiful, funny, and charming nurse. I exited out of my talk for a second. Sweet, beautiful, funny, and charming nurse. We eventually started dating, and one day we got married. And after we got married, Mr. Unlucky never got any closer to me for some reason. In fact, every time after that, he just kept getting farther and farther and farther away. It was weird not seeing him as much after that, but I was finally at peace for once in my life. A few years pass, and it's Christmas Eve of 1993. I hear a loud noise downstairs in the middle of the night, and my wife is absolutely terrified. I get out of bed, grab the gun from the bedside table, and head downstairs, mostly to. I'm thinking that an ornament may have fallen off the tree or something, but I want my wife to feel like I'm safe. Sorry, I had the hiccups. What I met with, however, filled me with a long, overdue dread. Standing right in front of me is a tall, slender man with a crimson suit and a matching Santa hat, a large bag, and an orbiting red light, now with antlers. The figure turns to greet me as if he was expecting me, and it's none other than Mr. Unlucky himself. I dropped the gun and fall to the floor in terror. Mr. Unlucky reaches his long, bony arms into the sack and pulls out a small present, one with black and orange wrapping. He places the gift in front of me and says in a soothing yet horrifying voice, "Merry Christmas." Alrighty. I think that one is super interesting. I really enjoy it. There's 2 parts that kind of I wish were added upon. He just says, like, during my trips. I think I can kind of assume it was like missionary trips because he's part of the church, or a church. So that's what I'm assuming, because otherwise, like, I just don't really understand how that plays into the story. And also, I wanna know what he got in that present. Like, come on. Plus, it's in the orange and like black wrapping. Like, it's Halloween related. I want to know what's in there. Like, tell us. That's the only thing I really wish was added upon. What was in the present? Yeah. Also, I want to know if he ever saw him again. Like, what happened? Like, finish the story. But I still think it's really well done, and it definitely gives you the chills, like, reading over all this stuff that happens. I think it's really cool. Alrighty, this next one is really, really long. This is probably the longest story. It's about like 2.5, 3 pages. This one's really long. And it's good. It's definitely gives me the chills, so I'm excited to go ahead and read it. Alrighty, so this one is called Halloween Prank, ends with our family moving away. This is written by the user Dante C1231. face. He grabbed that lighting exchange really weird. With a pretty convincing, worrying face, he grabbed my hand and started running, AJ smiling in between breaths as he followed after. Eventually, we were right outside the small field that my brother was hiding in. I don't remember a scarecrow being here, AJ whispered to Gordy. They kept whispering phrases like these when my brother jumped out right as I was passing him. I punched him in the stomach and screamed at him as I wiped away tears. We're sorry, AJ said. Yeah, we're sorry, Gordy chimed in. But I must know how the hell you got here before us if you were just behind us. My brother's smile quickly faded. What do you mean? I was standing here the whole time. It was now dead silent, the only noise in the cornfield a cool breeze as we stared at each other in confusion and in horror. Then we heard the rustling in the cornfields behind us. This still gives me chills even reading it after I already have finished. Okay. My brother picked me up and started a mad dash back to the house. Gordy and AJ followed after. Arthur, you better not be lying. Gordy yelled as we were running. Just then we heard a thud. What the hell was that? AJ screamed as a soft giggle was heard in the distance. It seemed like every time he spoke, the creature warned you with the noise, alerting you to shut up. How do I know it was a creature following us, you ask? I'll tell you how. I'm sorry if you're banging. I don't know if that's just in my earphones or if you can hear that, but I apologize if you can. When we finally arrived at the house, we all started barricading my brother's bedroom door. However, he stopped us. Yeah, I'm really sorry if you hear those bangs. Saying he forgot to get the gun, we all hesitantly stopped and let him run to our dad's house to get the gun. Dad's room to get the gun, sorry. AJ ordered me to shut the blinds on my brother's window, which was overlooking the cornfield. I ran over, and before I shut the blinds, I peeped out the window. In the cornfields, I saw a tall, black figure. It had long, skinny arms and was staring out the window as if he were expecting me. He slowly pulled his arm out of the cornfield and started waving the knife he had in his hand. I on the subreddit RulesHorror. Alright. You sure you have all the rules memorized? My boss said as he gathered his belongings to go home. Yeah, sure thing. I got them all up here, I said as I pointed to my head. He gave me a nod, headed out the door of the small office to go home. My boss was a little off, to say the least. This was my first month as a security guard at the cemetery right around the corner from my residence, and I had just gotten out of college about 3 months prior. The last month of shifts had been boring, sitting around checking cameras and doing rounds to the cemetery, making sure nothing is out of order. Exciting, right? I needed a source of income, and this was the best paying job I could find. No real experience needed, the flyer said. My take was that they were desperate to find someone fast, so I took advantage of that. I was hired the day I found the flyer, over the phone. I never even found out the guy's name. Really suspicious. Once I came in on my first day, my boss gave me no training, no do's and don'ts, just a verbal list of 9 rules I had to follow and memorize before Halloween night. These rules are to be followed only on Halloween night, he said. You must follow these rules the exact way they are told you. If you mess up even a small part, well, you won't mess up, because I trust you to follow them word for word. I looked at him, confused, because this almost sounded like a threat. Nevertheless, I pulled out my phone and started an audio recording so I could record the list. Once he finished telling me the rules, I was in absolute disbelief. This guy's insane. No wonder no one wants to work here. Whoa. No wonder why no one wants to work here. This guy's actually crazy, I thought to myself. I know every place has certain rules to follow, but to designate a set of rules, insane rules, for Halloween night only. I guess you won't know how I felt until I tell you the rules that he gave me, word for word, exactly how he told me, straight from the recording. Beep. Rule number 1, on Halloween night, please arrive at 8:30 p.m. No earlier, no later. Do not walk in these doors until it reaches 8:30. For the love of God, please. Rule number 2, stay inside the office until 9:15 p.m. Do not leave. Keep yourself occupied, but do not check the security cameras during this time. I'll make sure to turn them off before you get there, so there's no temptation to peek at them. This might be one of the most important rules. If the monitor turns on by itself, do not look either. If for some reason you look and you see it has revealed the A section of the cemetery, you must turn off the lights in the office and hide. If it reveals the B or C section and you look at it, your only option is to run. Good luck with this. To make it easier, just cover the monitor with a jacket or a blanket, because you will not want to see what happens out here this time on Halloween night. Rule number 3. After 9:15 strikes, you will have 30 seconds to get out of the office. Leave the door unlocked. It is possible you will pass an unnaturally tall figure with no facial features. This is not a Halloween costume, and you must tell him good evening and look him right where his eyes would be. If he doesn't respond, continue on your way to patrol the cemetery. If he says anything at all, you must just stand completely still. Do not move a muscle. He might walk around you, but if you keep still until he's done, you should walk away with no problem. Go into the office and slam the door behind him. Rule number 4. You will make your way to Section A. Once you inspect Section A, you will realize the gravestone titled James R. Hackney is being dug up completely. This is not out of the ordinary. Do not, and I mean do not pay any attention to what is inside the 6-foot hole in the ground. You will not see the rest of your shift if you look down into that hole. Just keep walking to Section B and do not look back. Rule number 5. As soon as you cross the bridge from Section A to B, you will notice about a dozen shadow-like figures emotionally intact after looking. Rule number 6, once you get the go-ahead, continue on to section B. You may walk around and do what you would normally do every night here. The only catch is you must stay in the section until 10 p.m. It should be about 9:30 to 9:45 by now, so you won't have to wait too long. After the time crosses 10 p.m., continue on. Rule number 7, after walking out of section B, you will notice a strange temperature change and lighting change as well. The time will have jumped to 2 a.m. after crossing. Do not panic and please do not answer your phone. Your phone will be ringing constantly. As soon as it starts ringing, you will stand still and not move until it stops. It'll be calls from your mother, father, siblings, girlfriend, boyfriend, anyone you can think of. You must not answer these calls. It is actually not them calling. It is in fact the man that you saw earlier, the one with no facial features. He's trying to lure you back to the office. You must stay away from that office until I tell you to go back. Your phone will stop ringing after about half an hour, which will leave you at around 2:30 a.m. You can continue on at this point. Rule number 8, you will notice another time jump, but this one only 2 hours, from 2:30 to 4:30 a.m. If the time still says 2:30 after the call stop, you are in trouble. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do from here. You messed up a step at some point. If you end up here, you can finally finish your inspection of section A, or section C. I apologize. Section C. You must be prepared for a woman covered in blood to run up to you asking for help. She will be asking you where her baby is, and if you can come fast to help her, do not be startled no matter how loud she yells. Tell her you will meet her outside the cemetery in 10 minutes, and for her to wait there. She will run off in the opposite direction, and that's how you will know you succeeded. There will be a lot of towels and rags all over the ground covered in blood around section C. This is the only maintenance you will have to do. Just pick them up and dispose of them in the waste bin closest to you. Rule number 9, after completing this final task, you must run back to your office. Do not look anywhere but ahead of you. You will see figures everywhere. You will hear your name being called from voices you think you recognize, but just keep running. Once you reach the office, you will see the faceless man leaving the office building. It should be 5 a.m. at this point. He will stop you and either say good work and nod at you, and he will slowly walk into the office and close the door. For the remainder of the shift, you can check the cameras, sit down, go on with your shift until I come inside to start my own. Instead, he would say, come with me. If he says come with me, you will run and lock yourself in the office. Do not fall for his calm and monotone voice. He is anything but calm if you mess up. Do not let him in and wait for him to stop banging on the door. Once it stops, cover your eyes for the last hour of your shift. Do not look around you until you hear 3 knocks on the door. This will be me to relieve you of your shift. You won't be called in for a few weeks to come to terms with what you have seen, and you will be paid a handsome amount of money for your duties. Now that you have listened to the rules well, I hope you can understand my initial suspicion and why I was so baffled. I thought this was a joke until I finished my shift. After I arrived at 8:30, my boss left and I decided I was going to follow the rules given to me to humble him and be a good sport of the prank. I didn't check the cameras and I headed out the door. After going outside, the brisk fall air hit me as I saw a tall man walking up to me. I looked at him and he was actually faceless. It looked so real and kind of gave me the creeps. I almost forgot to tell him good evening. He looked at me, well, I think he did, and continued on straight through the door. I shivered a little as I continued on to section A. I arrived at the entrance in search for James R. Hackney's grave, a grave I always saw as it was the biggest one there. To my disbelief, it was actually being dug up. I felt sick to my stomach that they would go this far to scare me, so I hurried past the grave as a wave of gangsters wanted me to look, since they already warned me against it. I froze and felt pens and needles in my hands as I saw myself standing there in the distance, at least what looked like me, except I was taller and covered in blood. As the figure that presumably was me stared back, it let out a screech and started running towards me. I was startled and absolutely mortified by this and turned around to run. I looked back, and as it reached its arms out, it completely vanished. As soon as it vanished, I heard a voice from within my head say, "Continue." At this point, I had a million thoughts running through my head as I started to realize whatever was happening was somehow impossibly real, and I felt my mind switch from confused to defensive. I inspected the area until 10 p.m., constantly looking over my shoulder. I checked my phone and saw it was time to move on to Section 3, or Section C. I felt exactly what I was told, a temperature change, and saw the surroundings just get a little bit darker. It was noticeably colder. No way, I told myself as I reached for my phone, which displayed 2 a.m. Before I could form another thought, my phone rang on cue and I stopped dead in my tracks. "Dad," the phone displayed. I stared back at the phone as I looked at those 3 letters. I never knew my dad, and I definitely never had him saved in my phone. I felt a tear form in my eye because this was a very sensitive topic to me. I let it ring as I got lost in a trance of thinking about how on earth any of this was even possible. The ringing finally stopped, and I let out a sigh of relief. I remembered the next rule about the time, and I opened my phone again. 2:30. I kept moving on with some stray tears in my eyes, watching my phone from 2:30 to 4:30 a.m. This was a relief to me because now I knew that this was somehow real. I realized I've done all the steps right thus far. As I started inspecting Section 3 with cold fingers and numb toes, I apologize, I heard screaming. Naturally, this scared the hell out of me, and I jumped out of my shoes. I snapped my head around to a blood-covered woman screaming, "My baby! I can't find my baby!" I told her after a bit of hesitation I told her to meet me at the entrance of the cemetery in 10 minutes. She nodded and ran off, and I noticed a ton of blood-covered rags all over the ground. Shaken up by her screams, I slowly picked up the rags, one by one by one, and threw them out. I looked around and ran back to the office. The whole run, I didn't see anything and didn't hear anything, which was weird because my boss said otherwise. I'll count my blessings here, though, and find myself in front of the office finally. The man was leaving, scary story videos, because if his other stories are as good as these, then I'll definitely be picking them. Alright, so the last one is called Halloween Carnival. It's written by the user DragonNutss, and this was also on the subreddit RulesHorror. This one's very short. It's about, sorry, I have hiccups, 3/4 of a page long. It's very short, so. Hey, welcome to the Redacted Halloween Carnival. This is the 50th anniversary of our carnival, and we hope to keep it going for the future. We have attractions, rides, and mazes. Since you are the security guard, I have just a couple of rules for you to keep this place in check and ready for the next day. Your shift starts at midnight and ends at 6 a.m. the following day. Rule number 1. If you happen to see any guests who are unwanted here, guide them to the dining hall. The chefs will watch over them and cook them for the attractions. Rule number 2. Do not eat the food unless you don't mind hair and pieces of clothing. If you do, make sure you eat it all. The chefs hate it when they see wasted food. Rule number 3. When going into the corn maze, you should see a death statue at the end of the maze. If not, you should run back to the front of the maze as quickly as possible. Pray you don't get lost. We are not responsible for retrieving your body back out of the maze. Rule number 4. If there is a clown named Mr. Cuddles that comes up to you, don't look into its eyes and tell him there's a kid in the dining hall. Don't mind the screams. Rule number 5. Make sure the attractions are in their cages. If the werewolf ends up getting out of his cage, use a silver bullet we gave you to protect yourself. It won't kill him, but he'll definitely run back into his cage. Rule number 6. Rule number 6. If the Headless Horseman is out of its pasture, run to the nearest exit and hide for 30 minutes. Rule number 7. Every night at 3 a.m. the demons come out to play. Just go near the Headless Horseman's pasture, as they hate him. Rule number 8. At 4 a.m. the zombies will break out of the haunted cemetery. Just go unlock the werewolf's cage and they'll have fun with the zombies. Just hope enough zombies actually broke out, or he'll be after you. Rule number 9. Sometimes when in your security